Jalen Hurts. Is he going to be the sleeper? Is he going to be the Kyler Murray, the Lamar Jackson from the past couple of years, guys that you could draft later on that because of the rushing you knew had great upside and came through for you? Hurts is in a position where he could be that guy. He had a fantastic fantasy run last season. Fantastic. Can he keep it up for all 16 games or all 17 games? That's going to take some of you getting used to. All 17 games. If he doesn't get hurt, why not? We know his rushing will give him a floor. What's his ceiling, though? What could he be passing? Because the quarterback, he wasn't very good. 55% completion percentage. That's terrible. That's beyond terrible. And we're going to get into the pass catchers in a second, but that limits the ceiling of the wide receivers if he's going to be that inaccurate. The opportunities were there. He prorated out to having over a 600 pass attempt season had he played all 16 games last year. So the attempts were there. Yards, not bad. Prorate, 4,500 yards, 26 passing touchdowns. Here's the kicker. Now, this wouldn't have happened, but the pace that he was on when he played last season put him at about 200 rush attempts, 1,200 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns. That is the rate of which he was running last year. Even Lamar Jackson, who led the league or led the quarterbacks in rushing attempts, was about 139. And the amount of run designs that they have for Lamar Jackson, when you think about that number and think about the pace that Jalen Hurts was on, it lets you know that ridiculous rushing season that made him the quarterback 3 during his stretch run in fantasy overall isn't really realistic over an entire season, over a 17-game season. So that's where you don't want to get caught over drafting Jalen Hurts, but because there are so many good quarterbacks this year, I don't think it's going to be a problem. It hasn't been a problem to this point. Right now, his ADP is 80th, and he's about the QB 10. That's good value. If you're drafting him at his ADP, I think you're getting him at a little bit of an undervalued price overall. I do like Devonta Smith quite a bit as a rookie wide receiver, what his upside could potentially be. The thing about Jalen Reagor is he's already got an injury rate ratio early on, even going back to college. He's got an 8-to-1 injury rate ratio. So we're expecting him to miss at least 2 games, or at least we're baking in 2 games missed into his projections. Ultimately, I still have him about just shy of 700 yards and about 3 receiving touchdowns. Because this is going to be the Devonta Smith show. Now, the one thing I will say is that Jalen Reagor will get bumped to the outside. They keep talking about, we'll move him to the slot, we'll move him in and out with Devonta Smith. Maybe that'll be the case. But ultimately, Jalen Reagor's there to stretch the field for Devonta Smith to be able to operate as the featured wide receiver. But this is where, going back to Jalen Hurts' completion percentage, his inefficiencies as a passer, it just puts a cap on these guys. I was so excited when Devonta Smith was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles because that was the one place where I knew he would be featured as the wide receiver 1 out of the gate and featured in the way that Devonta Smith needs to be featured because he has to be moved around the field. You can't just line him up on the perimeter and expect him to win one-on-ones and bump and run coverage. You can't. He's not big enough. It will be a factor in that sense. But if you move him around, if you allow him to play the slot, if you put him in motion, and you feature him that way, if you feature him the way Alabama did, he runs great routes. You can't give him space. He will get separation. He's got great hands. So all that plays up into what I suspect this offense is going to be tailor-made to. Ultimately, the volume will be there. I'm not concerned about that. I have him over 100 targets, but this is the kicker. I have him over 100 targets, but only 68 receptions. That's a reflection not on Devonta Smith, but on Jalen Hurts, of how often you can actually, or I should say how efficient he can be target to reception ratio, because you're dealing with an incredibly inaccurate quarterback. About 850 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. That's a good rookie stat line.